What's up guys, hope everyone is doing well. In this video I'm going to be going over some updates for XYO. Before I get into the charts, I want to go over some updates that pertain particularly to the project itself and what they're doing, going over the last couple of months. The first thing is going to be the XYO AI SDK, or the software development kit for the layer 1 associated with agentic workflows. We've started to really see AI agents pop up a lot more over within this last 6 to 12 months. Vibe coding, which has also kind of been a more recent term or phrase of the culture that's popped up with people that don't really have too much experience or expertise at all within software development using AIs such as Claude and just AI agents in general in order to help themselves not only learn but also produce and deploy these solutions, these softwares that they're developing. And this is just generally going to allow the streamlining of on-chain development and deployment for XYO Layer 1 and the purposes that they're engineering their project for. Part of this is going to be the data lakes as well. These are cryptographically secured off-chain data storage, having on-chain proof of integrity, being compatible with just about every major storage platform, being lightweight, built for AI workloads. That's something that, again, really this is going to be kind of the main point going forward as I go over a number of these updates and these posts that XYO have made over the last couple of months. Because they clearly, their solution can be used in so many different sectors of the real world. But I think the biggest one is going to be associated with this AI, with the smart infrastructure, robotics, and things along those lines. We can also see here that XYO Layer 1 and its SDK are bringing verification to AI agents, AI infrastructure. This is going to be on Theta Edge Cloud, so that's going to be quite interesting going forward. We can also see that when it comes to the quantum computer scare that pops up here and there regarding the breaking the cryptography behind modern day crypto wallets, XYO is claiming that they're trying to get ahead of this, that they're starting now, and that they announced quantum resistant signing is now part of the XYO AI SDK. So that really kind of points to them being future oriented, or very Promethean in spirit, as a way to put it. And that's really one of the big points that I want to focus on here as I go over these posts, is how ahead of the curve they seem to be when it comes to what their project is and the solutions within the real world in so many different sectors, if not just about all of them, because they are all centered around data, which is what this post here is focusing on. Please see here this image. It says our world runs on data, the economy runs on data, the world of the future, AI and robots, it all runs on data. Data is the most important input. It is the modern day fuel which makes our global system, local systems run. I mean, without data and information, this modern world that we live in, especially as it's increasingly becoming technologic, is really useless. Data is, again, it's the fuel. And so this being done in tandem with things such as the AI boom or bubble, whatever you want to, how you want to refer to this new paradigm that's popped up, especially as it intertwines with things like robotics and infrastructure, bringing about smart infrastructure, robotic autonomy, autonomous car fleets, things like that. Nowadays we've started out with things like taxi cabs, then we got a little bit more decentralized with it, and a little bit more independent with it, things like Uber and other rideshare system, things like that. Now we're kind of moving into this era where we could start to see all of those jobs completely displaced by autonomous rideshare fleets that are operating off of DePINs and things along those lines, which XYO is within the DePIN sector. It's tried to move over into a DePi, or decentralized physical artificial intelligence sector with the smart infrastructures and robotics. That's really a kind of, again, that's really kind of the core of what I really want to point at here as I go over these posts is, again, with XYO being kind of ahead of the curve, the world that they are working towards with their business venture, with their blockchain solution, is something that we haven't, we're in the birth pains, we're starting to see it accepted, we're seeing blockchain as a whole being accepted far more with things like such as the Bitcoin ETFs, BlackRock, as powerful as they are, being interested in it, with the Clarity Act within America and regulation coming to that, and just general fundamental clarity coming across the world when it comes to Bitcoin, blockchain solutions in general, is very, very important. And we are starting to see that, but XYO is farther than that, in my opinion, because they are pointing towards a world that is heavily integrated with things like artificial intelligence, with robotics that are not just, they're autonomous, they're operating off of blockchains, they're connected to the XYO Layer 1 blockchain as their data bank. Obviously, they possess the necessary means, hardware, software, in order to process data, to kind of go through their own unique cognitive process in order to develop how they're going to behave and what their actions are going to be as an autonomous robot. But they need something to house the data that they're using in order to produce their actions. And so XYO is something that is placing themselves right at the forefront of that as a house for data, making sure that that data has integrity, making sure that everything about it is recorded, that it's safe and sound, it can't be altered or fabricated, so we don't have these AI systems, these smart infrastructures that are hooked onto the blockchains, connected to them, doing their particular functions, hallucinating and producing wrong outputs because their inputs are falsified or their inputs are faulty and they don't have any integrity. XYO is seeking to solve that issue, whether it's in the medical sector, whether it's in energy and logistics, whether it's something as mundane as, like I said, with these autonomous rideshare fleets, whether it has to do with just simple package delivery, especially if you think about going into a world where you don't have your Amazon delivery drivers anymore, you don't have a UPS, even like for example, United States Postal Service system. Eventually, we might just see drones delivering everything, and those are something it could utilize XYO in order to make sure these packages are being delivered to the right locations, that there's no hiccups along the entire logistics process of this. So if we go to this next post, we can see that they're bridging NVIDIA robotics tech on chain. I think this is going to be very important. Obviously, NVIDIA is a very big player within the technology space and within the world. And so what we can see here is kind of just talking about these robotics machines, obviously witnessing events. XYO Layer 1 carries the testimony for this. It carries the information, the data itself. And really, XYO kind of started out as something a bit more simpler than it has now evolved and come to be, more so just being kind of a general DPIN associated with geospatial data. If we think about the Coin app and you obviously having to, for example, like if you're a truck driver or something along those lines, if you do something that allows you to travel a lot, you could go around mining geospatial data or information and be rewarded native coin currency that you could trade in for XYO itself. So it started off as something a lot more smaller in scope, and now it has then flowered into something that is far more complex, far more sophisticated, and far more crucial for the world going forward, with the assumption that blockchain solutions get adopted properly, and we do really kind of go into this new world where we see a really futuristic society that's been kind of on the collective mind since the first anchor I'll just point out as the turn of the century, going from the 20th century into the 21st century. You think about Y2K and people thinking like, how is it going to be going into the 2000s, futurism and this and that. And obviously, humanity's always speculated on the future since at the dawn of our recorded history. But within the last, let's just say 25, 50, 100 years, let's just say going back to the beginning of the industrial revolutions, where technology really started to boom, and obviously has ended us up where we are now with things like internet and computers and far more exponentially sophisticated technologies. Now we're entering a blockchain society that's a smart society, a smart civilization, smart infrastructure, smart agriculture, smart everything, where it's all on the blockchain, very autonomous, and just very, very interesting. Really, is like I can't even begin to put into words just how interesting I personally think all of this is. And this picture here really focuses on what I'm getting at, is the architecture here of an autonomous, not just economy, but an autonomous world, a smart civilization, as I said. And here it says that this has been a quiet problem underneath an autonomous economy. Most machine-readable data carries no proof of where it came from, who produced it, or whether it was altered along the way. This could be pertaining to things like price feeds, sensor readings, delivery confirmations, weather reports. All of these are arriving as bare results. A human may or may not pause to sanity check them. An AI agent won't. An economy of autonomous actors needs a place of shared source of truth. That truth has to be verifiable rather than assumed. And this is the problem XYO Layer 1 has been built for. Data written to XYO Layer 1 is cryptographically signed at its origin, which means an agent consuming it can verify who produced it and confirm it has not been changed since. Provenance stops being a matter of trust in the pipeline and becomes a property of the data itself. So again, really the fact that XYO's buzzword, the biggest buzzword, is data, and how ambiguous and how broad data is in the real world. Data pertains to just about everything. Data and information, everything is centered around that. And as I was going on earlier about it being the fuel, as that image is going on about it being the fuel of our modern day world, as we become more and more technologically advanced, especially with the advent of AI and AI agents and smart robotics and things along these lines, where we're entering kind of this autonomous world of systems, whether those be kind of quasi-animated things like robots literally walking the streets and doing, I don't know, things like infrastructural repair to roads or whatever it may be, or, you know, robots replacing the logistics workforce and like warehouse workers and things like that. Whatever it may be, a lot of jobs are going to have a bomb dropped on them, I think, over the next 5, 10 plus years, where we see the AI stuff ramp up, the robotics ramp up, smart infrastructure, smart whatever it may, smart systems. A lot of this is going to be changed. We're entering a very, very crucial paradigm, I believe. And the best thing going forward is that hopefully all this is adopted properly, or if not, it could go to a very dark place. The first chart that I want to go over is Bitcoin dominance and others Bitcoin. Bitcoin dominance here on the top, others Bitcoin on the bottom. Others Bitcoin is the all cryptocurrencies excluding the top 10 against Bitcoin. And what's interesting is that the Bitcoin dominance here at the top and the others Bitcoin here at the bottom, they're basically inverse of each other, where we can see that as Bitcoin dominance was tanking here, others Bitcoin was rising quite strongly. As Bitcoin dominance was at a very long-term downtrend here, we saw that others Bitcoin was doing the opposite. So they're basically inverse to each other, where we can see others Bitcoin topping out here, Bitcoin dominance bottoming out here and rising. Others Bitcoin then starts its long-term downtrend here of 4+ years, recently just breaking this resistance that hasn't been in place since January of 2022. And at the Bitcoin dominance, we can see that it has been rejected off a long-term resistance, descending resistance. It lost its uptrend channel. It's been straddling here the median of the inside pitchfork tool that we can see here. And to me, this looks like it could potentially be pointing to the Bitcoin dominance finally, as it's been kind of stagnating here, losing energy, really. It can only, test this so many times before it either finds support or loses it. I'm vouching for it losing it. Let's say if we do see a brief bounce, I think it'll eventually be rejected here as well. Overall, I think we're going to see the Bitcoin dominance continue to enter a longer-term downtrend, more significant downtrend here. And we'll see others Bitcoin rise as we begin to see altcoins finally enter into something like an alt season. Altcoins have not been doing good since Bitcoin began its current bull run. Bitcoin itself, while doing a lot better than most altcoins, has still been kind of lollygagged and lackluster and somewhat disappointing to a lot of people, especially in light of past bull run iterations. And so with that, obviously we've seen altcoins significantly muted, and here we can see that this is a very important indicator. Every single time the others Bitcoin chart here has started to line up here with the Bitcoin dominance in these inverse relationships, where we can see crucial structures here being met for a downtrend of Bitcoin dominance. We can see the others Bitcoin chart potentially signifying that altcoins are actually going to have a significant run, because all the small bumps up in price of altcoins that we've seen over, going back to the end of 2022 haven't really been anything. They're not bull runs. They're kind of just more so stronger relief rallies, as Bitcoin's really in a bull run, and altcoins are kind of just in these weird, either some of them have been on downtrends this entire time. Some of them have made new all-time highs like BNB and Solana. Some of them have just made developments towards its prior all-time highs better than others with its uptrend structures. XYO is kind of one of those, although it's been retesting its bear market low of most recent. But the fact that we're actually seeing this structure here broke, and we're seeing currently the price maintain above it, is a very crucial sign for altcoins going forward, if this continues to play out in favor for them. On this chart for XYO, I just want to give a general view of where it's at on the weekly. I'm not really going to go over any lower time frame charts. I think at this point the lower time frame charts are not really that beneficial, as there's nothing really going on just yet. Whenever those become useful, in my opinion, or whenever we're actually in active uptrends and you can look at the more minute moves in those uptrends. But if we look here at the weekly chart, as I said, we're seeing the past bear market low being retested. The price hasn't quite come down to it yet, but it's, for all intents and purposes, basically there. We have yet to see this descending resistance broken, but we are seeing on, again, we're on the weekly chart here, we're on these higher time frames, so these are going to be more substantial analysis. We're seeing a bullish divergence shape up on the RSI, on the stock RSI. The MACD has been in a bullish divergence since basically the beginning of this entire downtrend. So thinking all of this, or factoring all of this into a bigger picture, again, we can all see bullish divergence here is already in place and is shaping up for a second degree of so on the RVI. It's also shaping up on the ASO as well. So all of these indicators, and you could say the same thing for Bitcoin. The last Bitcoin video I made a few days ago, I went over how from going from like the daily up to the weekly, there's numerous bullish divergences on Bitcoin as well. And it looks like, especially with it testing a crucial horizontal resistance support juncture at around approximately 64,000, hitting a crucial 4-month ascending long-term macro uptrend structure, it looks like Bitcoin is more likely than not, although, you know, who knows what's going to happen, in a process of bottoming out. And if we see that in tandem, again, going back to this chart with the Bitcoin dominance, so there's Bitcoin and how this looks, we can finally see the moment where, for example, here with XYO, it had its bear market here, bottomed out, and this entire stage here, basically this massive M structure that we can see right here, where we set these two increasing peaks, these higher highs, this has kind of been an accumulatory, transitory build-up phase into an actual bull run where it's more parabolic and far more imbued with bullish strength towards the upside, such as what happened here. And so what we could be seeing is something that I have been kind of pointing at, talking about for months as shaping up, is where we saw during the last bear to bull market for XYO, it made this very large macro double bottom here and entered its bull market. And what we could be seeing here is a double bottom again, kind of where we saw this Adam and Eve double bottom here, which led into these two peaks here, this overall bullish movement up to around 4.5 cents overall, leading into a longer term, a more macro W, where we see a bottom here and a bottom here. If XYO can manage to bottom out where it is currently, higher than this first low, then we would see, again, this ascending double bottom here, and we'd see another ascending double bottom here, kind of mirroring past structure and behavior, where overall this would kind of be the double bottom we see, where the main difference between now and the past for XYO, I'll just go ahead and move to this 4-weekly chart. I forgot to go over the indicators for this chart, which is like the most important thing that I want to go over in this video. So I'm going to insert it before I actually go over the structure. So we'll start off here with the most important indicator here. This is the vortex indicator. It's basically just measuring positive price pressure and negative price pressure. And what's very interesting here is the peaks of the negative pressure. So we can see that it's peaked out in a very crucial zone here, here, and here. So we have 3 instances across XYO's entire history where we can see here, right at this bottom, this bridge zone, right at the beginning of this bottom bridge zone. And now we've seen one recently right at the end of potentially our current bridge zone of the current bull market, or the second iteration here of the bear to bull phase or cycle, whatever you want to call it. And where we've seen, like I was pointing out, this potential double bottom structure coming into play, where this bridge is obviously longer than the first one. We're seeing a bullish divergence shaping up on the RVI potentially. It's been significantly oversold. It hasn't been recently reached a level so low that it hasn't seen since really kind of this first bottom back here, the lowest XYO has ever been. Again, the MACD is also histogram-wise, as we can see here, been in a bullish divergence since May of 2025. You can see the MACD itself with the Bollinger Band is potentially shaping up to move here towards the upside, eventually cross bullish, and the histogram has kind of been more of an earlier sign in indicating that going forward. RSI insanely oversold, more oversold than it was back here, yet the price is still just a tad bit higher, but it's basically even, so it's not really... it's about like watered down, exaggerated bullish divergence at that point, if you even want to look at it. But the point is that it's quite oversold. It's sitting at around 40 on, again, we're on the 4-weekly or the monthly time frame. And then this indicator here, actually forget which one this is. So this is going to be a stochastic-based momentum indicator. And we can see here that there's an oversold zone. We can see here it's kind of basically denoted in blue. It's like the price is getting, it's just significantly underwater. You know how if you bring some sort of buoyant object, like a beach ball or something like that, you pull it into water, you can only go so far before the pressure is going to want to fling it back up out of the water. So that's kind of where this indicator is pointing to, a situation like that, where we can see that XYO is quite underwater. It's been in a long-term downtrend. The indicator here is showing that it's kind of reaching its maximum distance of being drugged down into the water before that's about to start to lift itself back up. And as I said, as we all know, whenever you do that with some sort of buoyant object, you let it go and then it just skyrockets out of the water. That's kind of basically the exact same scenario that I believe, at least I'm arguing for, because who knows what's going to happen, is being painted here, especially in Confluence with everything else, all these other indicators that I pointed out, Bitcoin dominance, so on and so forth, but especially this indicator down here, this vortex indicator. This is very, very interesting. This has only happened twice in past history, and we just saw it happen again, and every time this has happened, of the past data points, it's been at lows or low zones where it's a good time to be buying. And then eventually we see that the bearish momentum here is dying off. This is what this is indicating. We'll see a bullish flip. We'll see a polarity flip. And then we'll start to see here that once we see the bullish line here move back up into this zone, historically this has kind of been where the peaks are. This one wasn't quite there yet, but this peak lined up with this peak here. So this is a bridging peak. So it's not really like a bull market peak per se. You can see here that the past bull market peak happened in this zone. So we could also again infer here that we haven't seen the bull market peak for XYO yet. So we're waiting for this line to move up somewhere into this zone. It might go a little bit higher, but I'd imagine it'll probably top out somewhere around this zone. So when we see the bullish line in this zone, if we do see that, or as we see it start to get closer and closer, then we can infer that XYO is at its all-time high, or its upcoming peak, hopefully in somewhere in a state of price discovery rather than not. 1 month chart. We can see that the bear market here going into 2020 was 25 bars, around 680 days. And we can see here that the most recent bear market was basically, it was 25 bars, 700 days. So we saw the bear markets, temporally speaking, they were the exact same length. And so what we can see for the last bear market going into its transitory phase here, this accumulation W here, where it was just a 0, 1, 2 movement, a simple ascending double bottom. It was 10 bars long, 280 days. Whereas now we can see a more drawn out, more complex double bottom where we see this one peak here split into 2 ascending peaks. Overall, we see 4 stages here. We see 1, 2, 3, 4, leading into again kind of this ascending double bottom, and where we've seen the bridging structure between bear to bull market here extended. And so kind of something that I've been thinking about is you know, if both bear market checks have been the same length where they bottomed out, we've clearly seen the bridge structure, the accumulation zone change, this kind of loading up, this build-up structure into potentially a parabolic bull market, whereas the last one here was 10 bars. So I'm wondering, hypothetically, which this doesn't really mean anything, I would take this with a grain of salt, but if these 2 bear markets so far have been the same going from the first iteration to the second iteration, I wonder if this time around we'll also see about a 10 bar long, around a 280, 300 day long, just about roughly 1 year long bull market going forward. And so this cycle around this bear to bull market period, the second iteration, obviously we're going to see changes here and there when we go from stages to stages and cycles to cycles, and then potentially speculate on what changed this time around was the bridge structure, where we saw the bridge increased in time. We had a longer period of time to accumulate. The bear market, or the bear market here was the same length as the last one, and now we're about to see a bull market the same length, or roughly the same length as the last one. And if so, then we would, let's say XY here is somewhere close to bottoming out. Then if it's about the same, let's just say about pushing 12 bars, so somewhere around a year or so, then we would see it topping out sometime around spring of 2027. Whether or not that's somewhere around like 15 to 30 cents, or somewhere closer to like 75 cents, pushing around $2. I think that those are reasonable ranges to look out for. as XYO continues to progress here, obviously with the assumption that it goes towards the upside and, you know, itself doesn't implode or Bitcoin doesn't continue to go down into a longer term bull market or bear market rather, because that is definitely a possibility. I pointed out that in the last Bitcoin video, there is definitely a possibility for Bitcoin to move as low as around the $30,000 to $40,000 range, but that's just not particularly where I'm deciding to place my bias and kind of where I'm centering my thesis at for what's going to be happening in the kind of medium to longer term. Now, if we go back to here, the weekly, again, we'll kind of see this. There's this major horizontal corridor here where you can see it was resistance here. Bitcoin double bottom, or XYO rather, here made this massive double bottom. We had the first bull market. We had the second bear market here. Support, support, support. Now we're again right in it. So this is a very crucial zone that XYO is in. I think it's more likely than not going to find support. There is, again, like I said, we're seeing the RSI is insanely oversold. The stock RSI is doing something very interesting here. Each of these vertical green dotted lines that we can see here going all the way back to February of 2020 are lined up with periods where the RSI, as you can see here, heavily oversold, not as oversold, pretty oversold. For the most part, all these are insanely oversold, somewhere at around 40 or lower. This is also paired when the stock RSI breaks its median point. Every single time here, it breaks the median. If we look at the MACD, this is associated with points when the MACD crossed above the 0 threshold each of these times. And, you know, it's also got correlations here with the RVI, but I don't want to continue to badger the point. The point is we're seeing a lot of confluences here on these indicators. We're seeing bullish divergences on these higher time frames. And each one of these points in time, you can see these are great buy periods, great periods where we saw here appreciation in price. This one here at the low here was around 800, 900% here. Around 54,000% here quickly, move around 240%. This move here, 518%. Had you held longer, 1,500%. The specific move here was 1,000%. So I mean, you know, if XY here just moves, you know, at the lowest bound here, somewhere around like 250%, that's going to be tested around a cent. Again, that's a very crucial zone, anyways. Right here, where we see resistance, there was resistance here, and then it's kind of the median of this consolidation we saw here. So a penny is going to be a very important level, structurally speaking, and also psychologically speaking. Once XY moves back up to that, if we even see that happen, you know, let's say another 1,000 or so, 1,500% move, that will take it up back to around the 4.5 to 5 cent zone. And obviously, ideally, we want to see XY move higher than that. And especially here, if we look at this RBI, it's been in a long-term bullish divergence going all the way back to November 2025. So basically, this entire downtrend structure right here for XYO has been in a bullish divergence with the RBI, which is going to be associated with volatility. So we could be seeing a lot of pressure building up here. Like I said, the MACD has been in a bullish divergence since March of 2025. This entire downtrend, basically, the MACD has been inching itself closer to its 0 point. And to me, that has just been signaling as the RSI finally has gotten very, very oversold here. We've seen the stock RSI break its median. Like I said, RBI's got a long-term bullish divergence. This to me is signaling that the pressure has been, as the downtrend's been in play, the bears have been losing their momentum gradually over the last many months. And we're finally starting to see the pressure kind of converge in on a specific point. The best way to paint that picture is here with the MACD, as we're seeing it straddling the 0 point here, this convergence zone where we can see once it finally breaks this, it has the potential to really just exponentially skyrocket as it did here. It did a bit more minorly here, and it did back here during the last bull run for XYO. So there could be something very big on the horizon. It also could technically be a further move downward, but factoring in the fundamental landscape, how Bitcoin looks, if we think about, again, the Bitcoin dominance and the others Bitcoin, I think more likely than not, it's probably towards the upside because, I mean, everything is just so unbelievably oversold right now. The psychological sentiment, like such as the fear and greed indexes, everything's just been shot for so long. And Bitcoin, to me, is just at too much of a crucial point and structure right now, with it sitting at, you know, right on top of the past all-time highs around 64,000. It's in a macro uptrend structure where it's finding support. It's insanely oversold and still technically in price discovery. So I don't really see why. It would make more sense for it to continue to go into a more long-term bear market, and then altcoins get even more throttled than they already are. I don't see how it could potentially get any worse than it already is. It's already so bad. It's just at this point, it's just, I mean, really kind of at a loss for words for just how bad the sentiment has been for so long and still remains to be. And so at some point, I feel like it's just been far too long, especially with an altcoins, of just, it's just bad. Like the sentiment's got to change at some point. We can't be in this terrible, deprived, depressed financial stage forever when it comes to the way that these markets are looking, with them just being held down like this. At some point, the polarity is going to have to flip. I mean, they can't sit in an excessive state of downtrend the entire time. At some point, we're going to see these, what I think is these bridges here, as I pointed out on XYO, we're seeing it bottomed out here with this Adam and Eve double bottom. It's been in this then transitory, this bridging structure where we're kind of seeing the spring being compressed. We're seeing pressure built up to where it's finally then going to release said pressure after potentially a macro double bottom forming here, very similar to the last macro double bottom, where we'll then see the downtrend structure here broken somewhere around 1.5 cents at around the 382, this ascending pitchfork. Where also you can see here at a very crucial support zone here as well in this ascending structure for the pitchfork. And the next place for XYO to go here would be retesting 4 to 4.5 cents, pushing the median here, so pushing prior all-time highs as we go into the end of this year, beginning of next year. So we're talking about pushing 8 cents, 9 cents, 10 cents, and potentially as it finally, hopefully, in an ideally case, enters price discovery, pushing 15 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents, maybe even higher, going into, like I said, kind of maybe around spring of next year, mid next year. But in general, I don't think the time frame really matters. One of the big things that I do want to point out for XYO is kind of what I was going over in the fundamental part of this video, going over the updates for the project itself, and kind of where XYO lies is really ahead of the curve for what their project's use case is and how it can impact and provide solutions in the real world, and how significant it is in and of itself. And so I think this is more so something to look at as a very long-term financial venture rather than something to kind of get in and get out of within a rough, smaller period of time just to make money. Now, I'm not saying not to do that. It's definitely something to do because XYO has a history of printing sizable gains. So obviously, take profits when you should be taking profits. If you're, significantly in profit, you should probably be taking your profits. But the point is that me personally look at XYO as a very longer term thing, because, growth that we've seen just in this bull market here, this is, I think, it is assuming XYO continues to thrive as a business venture, as a blockchain solution here, then this thing could be in the tens of dollars someday. It could be even higher than that, assuming that it gets adopted properly and it actually becomes useful within the world. And I personally, that's where I lean towards my bias. I think that is something that's quite likely. I mean, because they could end up being, as pioneers within their specific niche, something like an Apple or a Microsoft of their specific sector and what they're doing in the real world as a project and as a business venture. And so I think really kind of the sky is the limit going forward. Obviously, all based on the assumption that the business doesn't implode on itself. And here with this last chart, I want to go over the 2-month. We can again to see RSI is heavily oversold, sitting at 37. It's in its historically oversold zone. As we can see here, the stock RSI is bottomed out. It's been kind of tapering up here. It's been lifting off, so that could potentially be showing a switch here. The bearishness is kind of dying out here. We're in again at the bottom of the ascending uptrend structure that goes back to the double bottom set during the last bear market. The MACD is also, if we can see here, the histograms have been lessening, yet the price has been going down. So we can see potentially some kind of bullish tinted divergences here. We're starting to see the MACD flip its head into this ambiguous stage where it could potentially flip bullish over the next couple of months, going into summer and then going into fall. And the main indicator that I want to point out here is the SMIIO. So this is basically kind of just a momentum oscillator, really, where we can see it's just insanely oversold, quite far more oversold than it was back at the bear market bottom. It's just about as oversold as it was back in 2020, which is quite crazy because there's a percentage difference of 2,900% here. And so that's quite an interesting sign in my opinion. We can also see that the histograms of this indicator have also been building up, similar to the MACD histograms. So again, we're kind of seeing these confluences of divergences being built up, where we're seeing the prices continuing to lower and lower, hitting crucial, for example, here again, like I said, kind of this support resistance juncture. It was resistance, then we found double bottom support, bull market broke this, it's been continued to support here. My argument, my thesis is that this is going to be held in tandem with the ascending zone here, in tandem with all of these indicators that I've gone over, all these bullish divergences that I've pointed out, the Bitcoin dominance, the others Bitcoin chart, what Bitcoin looks like, and especially the Clarity Act. If that gets passed, the amount of liquidity that will be opening up for the market is going to be a very, very good thing, because the fundamental landscape has never looked better. It is continuing to get better and better. Yet the kind of the technical landscape, the psychological landscape, and sentiment is just throttled. Like, it's just terrible. And it's such a weird time that we're in. That's such an odd place to be at, where literally the system itself is thriving and growing and becoming accepted and welcomed with open arms, but the technical side of that system is completely polar opposite. And to me, kind of what I was going on about earlier, how things are just throttled, it's completely, dragged through the mud and in the ground. It can't stay like this forever. Eventually the polarity is going to flip, and altcoins have not had their polarity flip yet. Like, they have not done much. The ones that have done something still haven't done much, especially in comparison to what we know alt season has the potential to do for the viable alternative blockchain solutions, such as XYO is one that I'm vouching for. So that's really kind of the big picture of this video, is really to focus on not just XYO is just this altcoin that you might make a lot of money off of. It's really a genuine project, if you ask me. At least that's obviously my subjective view. It could end up imploding and going down a very bad route in the future, but as of now, I think they are positioning themselves quite appropriately as a pioneering force within their specific niche of data and AI and robotics and smart systems, smart infrastructure, and things along those lines. So that was all that I wanted to go over and update in this video. As always, none of this is meant to be financial advice, but all that being said and everything covered, I hope you all enjoyed and that you all have a wonderful day.